Hi there, and welcome to another of the series of Photoshop and Photopea tutorials that I'll be running. I've created these little short videos just to give you a reminder and a quick update on various Photoshop and Photopea techniques, kind of giving you one of each then one of the other, just so that you have that reference available to you when you're moving back and forth between the two programs. Okay. So what I'm going to do right here is we're going to be working on a series of shots in monochrome that we shot using a variety of lighting techniques. The important part about this is it's a great way to edit photos when you're working in monochrome or black and white. So I'm just going to open up a file. So I'm going to click on the open button in Photoshop. And I'm working in my Google Drive here. So I'm going to go in my drive. I'm going to the classes. And I'm going to our photography folder, navigating all the way to the lighting lab shoot folder. Notice that I'm using the proper file organization so that everything stays in its own files. I'm going to choose one of these photos here. I'm going to choose this one right here because it's a little bit underexposed, and this will give you a great example of how to do a levels adjustment. So I'm going to open up this file. And so first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a duplicate here of the background layer. Now in Photoshop there's a couple of different palettes that you're going to be working with a lot, one of which is the layers palette, which is right down here at the bottom. I always like to make it a little bit bigger, so I just click right between them. You'll notice that the cursor turns to a little arrow with an up and down. And you can just click and drag to resize this a little bit larger. So I'm going to right click on the background layer, select duplicate layer, and change the background or the duplicate layer to working. Working is a pretty standard file name for working on a specific live layer where all your changes are being made. Really important when you're working in Photoshop and doing any kind of photo editing that you always have your background layer preserved in its original sense. And then work on a separate layer so that you can always reference back and forth between the two of them to see what kind of changes you've made. Okay, so with the working layer selected, you'll notice here that it's highlighted. I'm going to go to do a levels adjustment. Now levels adjustment is a great way to change your contrast and lighting levels when you're in a black and white image. So I'm going to go up to my top menu, click on Image, go down to Adjustments, then choose Levels. If you're on a Mac, it's Command L is the hotkey, and if you're on a PC or Chromebook, it is Control L. So I'm going to click on Levels, and I will get my levels pop up right here. Now, if you've never used levels before, a quick little bit of a explanation of what you're seeing here. This little graph-like thing you're seeing is what's known as a histogram. Now, because we're working in black and white, we're only looking at basically your light and dark histogram. A histogram is basically an easy way to kind of visualize it as what it actually is it's basically a bar graph where it has 256 lines, all the way from black on the far left-hand side to white on the far right-hand side. So it's a bar graph with 250 shades of gray, essentially. So we have our black on the far left, our white on the far right, and in the middle we have an exact 50% gray. You can tell that this image is underexposed and a little dark because I have a lot of basically pixels, and that's what the bar graph is tracking, is the number of pixels in that particular shade over here on the left-hand side. Okay, so a quick thing to do to really lighten up this image a little bit would be to start pulling around the gray point. So I'm actually going to click on the gray midpoint, and I'm going to shift it here a little bit to the left. Or I'm just saying that basically everything above this point will be, this will kind of be where the 50% gray mark is in the image. So if you bring it towards dark, the dark side, it actually lightens the image because you're actually putting more pixels that will be above that 50% level. So you see as I do that, it really brightens up the face there. I can also pull in my blacks just a little bit so I can still maintain a really nice contrast. And I'm going to pull my whites into just right to the edge of that because we don't have a lot of stuff outside of that edge. So bringing your whites in just a little bit will brighten things up just a tad. Now, think my darks are actually pretty good. I don't want to, I've got good contrast there between the hair and the backdrop. Might go slightly lighter here, like this, and then I'll click OK. So you can see here, if I look at my layers palette, I have my working layer, my background layer. Right next to it, there's a little eye symbol. Now, when you're working with layers, the easiest way to think about it is that you're looking at sheets of paper. And so if this working layer is above the background layer, you're only going to be able to see the working layer. But if I turn it off or I make it transparent by clicking that little eye, you'll see through that layer because it's no longer visible down to the original. So this is what the original looked like, and I turn on my working layer, and you can see that we've really nicely brightened it up, and we've played around with it a little bit. Now, one of the cool things you can do when you're working in this kind of way is you can always go back to your background, create another duplicate, call this one working 2, right? And we can go for, I'm going to just turn off the visibility of working, and we'll do the same thing. So image, adjustments, and levels. I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to keep things a little bit more moody, a little darker. I'm going to really bring my whites up for that contrast a little bit. I'm really going to kind of keep the skin tones dark and really bring a lot of focus to that mask there. You can play around with that a little bit. Create a little bit more of a moody, sort of dark lighting atmosphere here, right? Kind of a neat effect, and it changes the feel of a photo a little bit, goes for a little bit of a, it's a little bit more dramatic. So I'll click OK. So you can see, here's the just sort of general exposed. You know, I've brightened everything up in general, added some contrast. This one's kind of cool. Might not be as well exposed, but we've kind of a more interesting lighting setup here, and then the original there, which is a little bit less contrast. So this one really boosts that contrast, but keeps it really in that sort of dark tone, whereas this one goes for just an all-over general mid-tone exposure. Okay, so that's working with levels. When you're done with your image, make sure you save it properly. So we're going to go File, Save As. I'm going to make sure I save it in the same folder. I'm going to save it as last name underscore first name. Obviously, this is not quite how yours will look because we'll use your actual names. First name, and then in this case, this was a 2-light setup, and this was station 2. So station 2. And making sure the format is set to JPEG. There's a little thing on the Macs where if you just try and put in the file extension up here, it'll still be using the format, but even though you've added a different extension, it's going to cause confusion when you try and open it up later. And hit save, and keep that quality at 12, click OK, and you are good to go.